welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are undertaking a mission that is, I think, highly relevant to almost every single person listening right now. We are cracking open the essential building blocks of graphic design, specifically synthesized for immediate application by, well, everyone.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether you're operating a multi-million-dollar software suite or just, using a powerful free app on your phone.
It really speaks to the era we are currently living in, doesn't it? I mean, the age of design democratization. For decades, the ability to create truly impactful visual communications was sort of locked behind specialized skills and, frankly, extremely expensive tools.
Right.
That gate is now wide open. But the thing is, while the digital tools have evolved and become incredibly accessible, the fundamental timeless principles of design, they haven't changed one bit.
The principles of type, image, color, space.
Exactly. All those core elements, they're universal.
And that's the crucial insight we're running with today. The goal of this deep dive isn't to teach you how to use a specific software button. It's to give you the structured, practical framework so you can approach any design project with real confidence.
And with genuine control over the message.
Yes, with control. Think of this as the shortcut to understanding the why behind what you see, allowing you to move beyond just trying to make something, look cool.
Well, we've organized the material into 4 clear, progressive pillars. We start at the highest level with the strategic foundation, which is all about understanding your brand and your audience.
Okay.
Then we move into the actual physical building blocks, so type and color.
Raw materials.
The raw materials, exactly. The third section addresses putting it together, so the complex interplay of layout, hierarchy, and composition. And finally, we wrap up with producing your designs, which covers the essential technical checks for print and digital launch.
What I appreciate most about this approach is that it really prioritizes the planning. The material makes this critical, efficiency-driven point. For every hour you spend on the strategic planning phase,
Before you touch anything.
before you even pick a font or a color, you save countless hours later trying to fix a confused or inconsistent design.
It's so true. We are aiming for maximum impact with maximum efficiency.
Okay, let's jump right into the strategic groundwork, because I think if you believe graphic design is about immediately opening an editor and choosing a nice background image,
Yeah.
you are setting yourself up for inconsistency and probably failure. The sources insist that effective design must begin with defining the goals. And critically, those goals are rarely aesthetic.
That's so right. The goals are decidedly non-design objectives. You have to first define your core project aims and what you hope to achieve for your organization or, for your client.
Right.
Let's take the provided example of a charity fundraiser. Your design brief isn't just a physical object. It's not design a brochure. The purpose is layered and it's functional.
So for a charity run, the objectives might be threefold. Firstly, you absolutely aim to raise funds through sponsorship. That's the obvious one. But equally important are the objectives to raise awareness of the cause in the community and also to actively recruit participants or long-term volunteers.
And this is exactly why design cannot be separated from strategy. If your design looks ultra serious and formal, it might appeal to corporate sponsors.
Right, for raising funds.
But it might totally alienate young, casual runners, which is your recruitment goal. So the decisions you make about color, typography, image treatment, they have to serve all 3 of those interconnected aims without compromising one for the others.
So the whole project is tied to you, your project, and your brand.
And design is just the visual execution of where those 3 things overlap.
So before we can even figure out what our visual brand should be, we need to know where we currently sit and, crucially, where our competition sits. This involves that initial phase, the market audit.
You start with a 2-part audit. Task 1, audit yourself. You gather all your existing communications, your website, email signatures, social media posts, any printed stuff. Everything. And you analyze both your verbal style, the tone, the narrative, and your visual style. Logo, palette, imagery, layout. Are they consistent? Do they even match what you're trying to do?
And the second part of that, task 2, evaluate peers and competitors. You need to look rigorously at others in your sector, especially if you're trying to launch something new or, fill a niche.
Right. And this detailed analysis leads directly to one of the most powerful tools in strategic planning, market mapping.
Oh, yes.
Market mapping is fantastic because it translates all this abstract positioning into a visual assessment. Instead of just listing who your competitors are, you actually plot them on a graph.
Okay.
The technique uses two intersecting lines axes that represent key aspects of the market. You use it to plot where existing competitors sit, which helps you spot those critical gaps you might fill with your design solution.
But how do you choose the right axis? That feels like the hardest part.
Well, it's crucial that the axes represent the extremes of decision-making for your target audience. In the source materials coffee shop example, the axes they chose are budget versus luxury and traditional versus modern.
Wow.
These are attributes that customers, consciously or subconsciously, judge when choosing where to buy coffee.
Right, so we can plot the competitors on this map. Coffee to go is obviously budget and traditional. Posh Beans is luxury and traditional. They've got the big leather chairs, the fancy crockery.
Yep.
And then Cool Cafe is modern and budget, maybe minimalist, high-tech ordering system, grab and go.
Exactly. And now you, the listener, immediately see where the gaps are. If you want to position your shop in that territory that is luxury but modern, you can see that section is currently unclaimed.
Right, it's wide open.
And that immediately dictates your design brief. Your logo needs to feel contemporary, your color palette might be muted and sophisticated, and your typography needs to be sleek, not ornate.
So this strategic positioning dictates every single subsequent visual decision.
Every single one.
Okay, so once we understand the market and our potential place in it, we need to define the project's essence internally. The sources suggest a detailed brand interview, a deep dive into your own identity. Why is this necessary if we already know the market?
Because the market map only tells you where you could go. The brand interview tells you who you actually are and what you're capable of delivering consistently. These are the foundational questions that force radical self-reflection before any design work can even begin.
Give us some examples of these crucial self-reflection questions.
They need to be specific. So, what does my project do on a day-to-day basis? What is the core problem we solve? But the really important ones, they relate to personality. Like, how would you describe my project's personality? Is it assertive, reserved, playful, or formal? And crucially, what tone of voice does my project have? And the acid test. What makes my project genuinely different from the competition that already exists? Answering these questions defines your unique identity and purpose.
And after that interview, you're left with just this massive brain dump of abstract concepts. That's where organization comes in, and the sources suggest using a mind map.
Yeah, the mind map or spider diagram is an organizational tool that's far superior to just linear notes because it visually shows the relationships and the hierarchy between all these concepts.
Right.
For instance, imagine the map for a new community website. You have the central idea, community website, and that branches out to categories like personality, welcoming, knowledgeable, or value, promoting the local area, building a local archive, and function, write about events, manage social media.
And because those ideas are visually connected, you ensure that your design elements, say a welcoming, readable font, are directly supporting your core values, like promoting local knowledge.
Precisely, it creates that cohesive vision.
Which leads us to the three fundamental elements of a successful brand.
The elements are, first, the verbal brand. This is the invisible foundation. Your story, personality, core values, tone of voice. Second is the visual brand. Everything the designer creates, the logo, typography, color palette, imagery, campaign design.
All the stuff we can see.
Right, the graphic building blocks we're about to discuss.
And the third element, which is the ultimate goal, is the brand emotion.
This is the resulting emotional reaction the audience feels based on the consistent experience of the first two elements. Do they think you are friendly, reliable, trustworthy? If the verbal brand says one thing and the visual brand says the same thing, the emotional response will be positive and predictable.
But let's play devil's advocate because this addresses a potential pitfall for listeners. What if my verbal brand says luxury and bespoke quality, but my visual brand says cheap and rushed? Maybe I used a stock font and some low-resolution imagery. What specific emotional confusion does that cause for the audience?
Well, that gap, that inconsistency, it immediately causes a breakdown in trust. If your verbal claims are high-end, but your visual execution is low-end, the audience's emotional response isn't really confusion, it's skepticism. They question the authenticity of your claim. Design becomes a lie if it doesn't align with the verbal promise. Consistency is what creates reliability, and reliability creates trust.
That brings us to the most visible part of the visual brand, the logo. The source material uses the fictional Daily Bread Bakery project to showcase the 4 main logo styles you need to choose from.
And understanding these styles is crucial for flexibility. The simplest styles are the letter mark, which uses initials like DB.
Like IBM or NASA.
Exactly. And the word mark, which is just the company name, Daily Bread. Word marks are great if your name is distinctive. Letter marks are excellent for tiny spaces or if you have a really long name.
And you have the graphic elements.
Right. You have the image symbol, a single graphic, like a wheat symbol or a stylized loaf. This requires the audience to learn what the symbol means, but it translates across languages really easily.
The Nike swoosh.
The perfect example. And finally, the most common is the combined mark, which is a combination of a word mark and a symbol. This is highly adaptable, as the elements can sometimes be separated, but it's essential the elements work together cohesively.
And speaking of flexibility, the source makes a very important strategic point about brand expansion, or creating an identity that stretches. Why should a small startup worry about future growth right now?
Because branding is expensive, and believe me, redesigning is even more expensive. You want a visual system, a core font, a core color palette that doesn't lock you into your current limited offering. A flexible brand identity means you can pivot or grow into new areas without needing a total visual overhaul.
The Cupcake Company example is perfect here. They start small, perhaps only offering cupcakes to order, which is their existing reach.
But they plan to stretch the brand into entirely new territories. This includes new products like giant celebration cakes or even cocktails for adults, which requires a much more sophisticated feel.
Right, and new audiences like weddings, graduations, and baby showers, and even new partnerships like coffee shop pop-ups or rail station kiosks.
Exactly.
So if the initial design was overly sweet, cartoonish, and covered in bright pink, it might work for cupcakes to order. But it would look absolutely ridiculous if it was applied to a formal wedding invitation or an adult cocktail menu.
Precisely. The visual identity has to be robust enough to carry the emotion for all those expansion points. If the strategy dictates flexibility, the visual solution must deliver that flexibility. Strategy always dictates the visual solution.
With the strategic foundation set, we can transition to the actual raw materials designers use. We'll begin with type, which the material calls the art of using letter forms in a conscious way to convey not just language, but a deeper message or meaning.
Typography it's just foundational. It conveys mood, tone, and information density all at the same time. A designer's primary job is matching the font's inherent personality to the project aims. If you get the font choice wrong, the audience will feel that clash immediately.
Let's explore that personality mismatch a bit. How do we know which fonts convey which moods?
It's largely based on historical precedent and visual familiarity. If you need something neutral and practical, you generally select a clean, unadorned sans serif, maybe like Helvetica Neue. These fonts feel efficient and functional because they lack decoration.
Okay.
If the message needs to be quirky or fun, you look for script or handwritten fonts, which suggest informality and energy.
And for formality.
For formal or serious projects, a traditional serif is the immediate go-to. Serif fonts, like Times New Roman, for instance, are associated with tradition, publishing, and authority because they have been used in books and official documents for centuries.
Makes sense.
And if you want the design to feel assertive or forthright, you'll use a bold, blocky display typeface, often with high contrast, that's designed to shout.
Understanding that inherent personality allows us to select the right tool. Now let's get into the jargon buster section, because if we want to master type, we really must understand its anatomy.
Oh, absolutely. Learning the anatomy is non-negotiable for smart design decisions. We start with the baseline, that's the invisible line all the letters sit on, and the cap height, which is the height of the capital letters. The real star of the show, though, is the X height.
Which is the height of the lowercase x.
Right.
Why is the X height, relative to the cap height, the most important structural measurement for readability?
Because it determines the perceived size of the lowercase letters. A larger X height means taller lowercase letters, which greatly enhances readability, especially when text is viewed at a distance or in small print sizes, like in captions.
So two fonts can be the same point size, but one looks bigger.
Exactly. If two fonts are set at 12, the one with the larger X height will look and feel much clearer. This is why many screen-based fonts are designed with really generous X height.
If that's true, then why would anyone ever choose a font with a small X height?
Well, function often competes with fashion, doesn't it? A typeface with a small X height and long ascenders and descenders can look very elegant, airy, and sophisticated, but it's terrible for long blocks of body text.
Okay, so you'd save it for a special occasion.
Designers might reserve those typefaces for formal invitations, short headings, or display purposes where aesthetics slightly outweigh rapid comprehension.
We also need the ascender and descender, the parts of letters like H or Y that extend above the cap height or below the baseline. And let's not forget the delightful detail of ligatures.
Ligatures are those beautiful little moments where two characters are combined into a single glyph. Usually you see it with phi or fel. They exist for purely aesthetic appeal, really. They correct a visual awkwardness when the dot of the I clashes with the hook of the F. It's a subtle touch, but it greatly improves the visual rhythm of the text.
These structural terms lead us directly into how we measure in space type, which critically impacts whether a design is merely readable or truly effortless to consume.
Yes, we need to dissect vertical and horizontal spacing.
Let's start with the vertical. The space between lines of text is called leading.
Correct. And increasing the leading generally improves readability because it prevents the ascenders and descenders from creating a visually tangled mess, especially in denser paragraphs. It gives the eye a clearer path to move to the next line. If you're struggling with a cluttered block of text, increasing the leading is often the fastest fix.
And horizontally, we have two different controls. First, tracking.
Tracking adjusts the space between all characters across an entire word or line equally. You might increase tracking in an ultralight headline to give it an airy, elegant feel, or you might decrease tracking slightly in very dense body text to fit more words on a page. You have to be careful with that, though, not to make the text too cramped.
And then there's kerning. That's the space between individual pairs of characters. You mentioned the W and A example earlier. Why can't the software just fix that automatically?
Because every pairing of letters is a unique visual puzzle, and the computer doesn't understand the relationship between shapes as intuitively as the human eye does.
It just sees boxes.
It just sees boxes. Take W, followed by A. The automated tracking setting measures the distance between the bounding boxes of those letters. But because of the sloped sides of both letters, there is a large, gaping, awkward visual void in the negative space between them.
So kerning allows the designer to manually tuck the A under the arm of the W to close that gap.
Precisely. It's the subtle detail work adjusting the space between T and O, or V and A. Kerning is what transforms text from a sequence of characters into a visually balanced professional word shape. It's the essential difference between a decent layout and a truly polished one.
So what are the typeface families we should be familiar with when we start choosing?
There are two main groups, serif and sans serif. Serif typefaces have those small decorative strokes at the ends of the strokes, as we discussed.
Right.
Within serifs, you have variations like transitional, like Times New Roman, common newspaper fonts, and modern, which are fonts like Bodoni, characterized by extremely thin horizontal strokes and severe vertical stress. It gives them a high-fashion, dramatic look.
And the sans serifs, which literally mean without serifs, they often feel more contemporary.
They do. Within sans serif, you find grotesque styles, the early functional sans serifs, and the much more legible humanist styles, such as Gill sans or Verdana.
Humanist sans serifs are everywhere on screens.
They're used widely for body text, especially on screens, because they incorporate geometric shapes, but they maintain visual characteristics that make them highly readable, unlike the sometimes overly mechanical, grotesque styles.
And we also have those specialized categories.
We have script, which mimics handwriting, slab serif, which has very heavy rectangular serifs, often used for a bold, industrial, or even a Western feel. Think headlines on posters and display fonts.
Display fonts are just for showing off.
Pretty much. They're custom typefaces designed exclusively for large, attention-grabbing headlines, not for continuous reading.
And the beauty of modern font libraries is the typeface family.
Oh, the family is what gives a designer immense power while ensuring visual harmony. The family maintains basic characteristics while offering variety in weights from ultralight to black, as well as italics, condensed, or expanded forms.
Right.
Using 5 different weights from the same font family, say bold for the headline, light for a pull quote, and regular for body text, provides necessary contrast while guaranteeing a unified professional feel.
That brings us to combining typefaces. If we have this huge selection, how do we choose combinations that work without creating a jarring mess?
The guiding principle is opposites attract. Contrast is key. You should pair fonts that look distinctly different but still complement the content and each other. The goal is to create contrast for hierarchy without creating conflict.
So a classic pairing would be an established serif with a very clean contemporary sans serif.
Exactly. Pairing a traditional serif like Garamond with a neutral sans serif like Helvetica Neue Roman works perfectly because Garamond provides the classic, sturdy anchor and Helvetica provides clean legibility. You want difference in form serif versus sans serif, but harmony in mood.
You wouldn't pair two really decorative fonts.
No, the audience wouldn't know where to look first. It would be a nightmare.
And now for the critical safety lesson, the cardinal sins of typography. We've seen the rules. Now let's talk about where most people go wrong, often when they ignore those rules. What are the cardinal crimes against type we must avoid?
The most common and most egregious crime is distortion. Never, ever stretch or lengthen a character horizontally or vertically just because you want it to fill a space.
Oh, this is my pet peeve.
When you need a font that is tall and skinny, use an actual condensed font from the typeface family. Stretching text undermines the careful proportions and aesthetics the type designer created, and it instantly makes the design look amateurish and unprofessional.
I see this all the time in PowerPoints, where people just stretch the text to fit the slide width. Is that just a sin of poor taste, or does it actually harm the design?
It absolutely harms the design, beyond taste. It destroys the X-height and cap height relationship, it reduces legibility, and it introduces a real visual dissonance. You should also avoid rotating text excessively, and unless your intention is purely artistic obfuscation, avoid using illegible novelty typefaces for anything that needs to be read.
Function must trump flair. Let's transition from the structure of type to the emotional impact of color. Color, the sources state, is the lifeblood of design because it expresses specific values and emotions faster than any word can.
Color is a powerfully expressive tool because it bypasses the analytical brain and goes straight to emotional memory. Understanding the emotional architecture of color is the starting point. We see clear psychological patterns.
Okay.
Warm colors like red, orange, and yellow are stimulating, energetic, and active. They are associated with action, speed, and even hunger.
Right, think fast food logos.
Exactly, whereas cool colors, blue, green, and violet are passive, relaxing, and calming. They are associated with security, intelligence, and tranquility.
But that's Western psychology, right? Color also carries heavy symbolism that changes culturally.
Absolutely. The symbolism is deep-rooted. Red symbolizes love, heat, but also danger. Green symbolizes luck, success, and environmental growth. Black is often complex. It conveys intelligence, mystery, and formality, but also death or mourning in some cultures. A designer has to be highly aware of these associations, especially when designing for diverse markets.
Color choice carries massive subconscious weight.
Huge.
Now, we need to get highly technical because the shift between digital and print color is where a design project can fall apart dramatically. We need to understand the difference between digital RGB and print CMYK mixing.
This is so critical. Digital screens use RGB red, green, blue, which is additive mixing. When you combine all these colors at full saturation on a screen, they produce white light. This allows for a huge, brilliant gamut of color, all the glowing, vibrant colors you see on your monitor.
But for printing, use CMYK.
Right. CMYK uses subtractive mixing, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. K for key. These are pigments, or inks. When you combine them, they absorb light, making the result darker, eventually reaching black. The CMYK color gamut is physically much smaller than the RGB gamut.
So if I design a vibrant, fiery red logo on my screen in RGB mode, and I send that file straight to a printer, what happens?
You will likely be very disappointed. That brilliant light-emitting red just cannot be perfectly replicated by ink absorption. The printer will attempt to convert it to the closest CMYK equivalent, and the result will be a slightly muted, possibly duller red, or perhaps even an orange-tinged hue.
That's the gamut limitation.
That's it. And that's why converting your file to CMYK mode is essential for printing, as it forces you to design within the printer's physical capacity from the start.
Before we move on, let's nail down the descriptive terms for color variation.
Good idea. The pure color name is the hue, so red. When you mix a hue with white, you create a tint, making it lighter.
A pastel color.
Exactly. If you mix a hue with black, you create a shade, making it darker. And mixing a hue with gray creates a tone, which decreases the saturation. These manipulations allow designers to create depth and complexity beyond the 6 basic colors on the wheel.
Speaking of complexity, how do we select successful color combinations? We rely on the trusty color wheel.
The color wheel is indispensable for harmony and contrast. We use it to find two types of successful schemes. First, clear contrast is achieved using complementary colors, those directly opposite on the wheel, like red and green or blue and orange.
They really pop.
They maximize contrast, creating energy, vibrancy, and ensuring visibility. Excellent for calls to action.
And the second type, harmony of hues.
That's achieved using analogous colors, those situated right next to each other on the wheel, like different shades of blue and green. Analogous schemes create calm, cohesive, and harmonious palettes, excellent for conveying tranquility, depth, or for using as a primary brand background.
This leads to the tricky topic of how colors interact based on their context.
This is crucial. Color in context means that the background color profoundly influences the perception of the foreground color. For instance, a medium gray circle placed on a bright yellow background will look darker and cooler than the exact same gray circle placed on a dark blue background.
So the color itself doesn't change, but our perception of it does.
Right. Designers exploit this phenomenon to manage visual temperature and value.
And the disruptive effect known as color vibration, what causes that visually uncomfortable feeling.
Color vibration occurs when two highly saturated, highly contrasting colors, usually complements like bright red and a highly saturated green, are placed immediately adjacent to each other.
Kind of hurts your eyes.
It does.
Yeah.
The retina gets overloaded trying to process the boundary between two light sources that stimulate different parts of the eye, causing a visual glow or shimmer. While sometimes used intentionally in highly dynamic designs, you must avoid vibrating color combinations for body text.
Why?
Because they cause retinal fatigue and make reading utterly impossible.
To bring this back to practical creation, the material suggests building your own cohesive color palette digitally using a simple tool.
Yeah, you should use a color picker tool, which is widely available in modern software. Instead of trying to guess colors, you can sample them from inspirational images, from nature, from successful existing designs, or photographs that convey the exact mood you want.
So you could sample from a butterfly wing, for instance.
Exactly. The source shows sampling colors from a close-up of a butterfly wing or a natural still life to capture subtle, real-world complexity. And once you sample them, you must rigorously save those color values, the CMYK, RGB, or HEX codes, to ensure absolute global consistency across your entire brand universe.
We've moved from strategy and individual building blocks. Now we enter the phase of composition, taking type and color and organizing them into a logical and attractive layout that successfully delivers the message. We start with the fundamental structure.
The initial design constraint is always the format, isn't it? Is it for print like a large poster, a magazine ad, or a small DL trifold leaflet, or is it digital? And digital media requires completely different considerations, not only in terms of dimensions like, say, social media specs, 1080 by 1080 pixels, but also responsiveness and file size.
One of the most powerful and often misunderstood elements is white space, or negative space. This isn't just wasted area, it's a deliberate choice.
Oh, white space is the deliberate, organized breathing room left around text and graphic elements. It is not necessarily white, by the way, it's just the background area.
An active element.
It's an active element. Its inclusion is crucial because it enhances readability by separating information blocks, it provides organization, and most importantly, it immediately conveys sophistication and confidence. The less is more principle is visual evidence of this.
And we must differentiate between the two types of white space.
We talk about small space, which is the space between characters and words, that's our kerning and tracking, and large space, which encompasses the margins, the space between content columns, and the space framing major content blocks.
Generous margins feel very luxurious.
They are a hallmark of high-end design because they convey confidence and authority. You aren't desperate to fill every single inch of paper.
The structural integrity of a layout often relies on rules derived from mathematics, designed to create layouts that are inherently pleasing to the eye.
Right, like the golden ratio and the rule of thirds. The golden ratio, derived from the Fibonacci sequence, defines a pleasing proportion, roughly 1 to 1.618. For beginners, the most common application is in determining proportions, perhaps the width of a main content column relative to a sidebar.
It creates a sense of natural harmony.
Mathematical harmony, yes.
The rule of thirds is far more immediately applicable, though.
Oh, absolutely. The rule of thirds is a simple visual guide. You just divide the layout into 9 equal sections using 2 horizontal and 2 vertical intersecting lines.
Okay.
You maximize visual impact and dynamism by placing the most important elements, the headline, the key photograph, a call to action button on those intersecting lines, Or, ideally, on the intersection points themselves. It just prevents the design from feeling static or boringly centered.
And before we touch the mouse, we have to talk about ideation. Why is sketching still so vital in an age of sophisticated digital tools?
Sketching or creating rough thumbnails is the fastest, lowest stakes way to explore dozens of layout ideas in minutes. You don't want to waste hours building 3 complex digital layouts only to realize the structural idea failed on step 1.
You follow the 4 steps.
Right. Brainstorm your words and concepts, compile a brief by gathering text and images, start sketching some rough visuals, and only then do you work up ideas as detailed digital concepts. That Leo Zodiac card design example in the sources, showing the rough sketches first, demonstrates how you quickly find the visual solution on paper before you commit to the digital time sink.
Okay, so once we have the structure, the designer's primary role is to organize information so it's easy to understand. This is the goal of hierarchy, showing the relative importance of different elements on the page or screen.
Hierarchy guides the reader's eye from the most important information to the least important. And we use typography to create this visual roadmap. The methods are pretty clear.
Like size.
Size, bigger, usually means more important. Weight, so bold or heavy fonts command attention. Uppercase. And position top left is typically the starting point for reading in Western languages.
This allows designers to clearly rank text elements.
Yeah, you must establish a clear ranking system. Level 1 is the headline, the essential attention-grabbing message. Level 2 is supporting text, pull quotes, or subheadings. Level 3 is the body text.
It's a sequence.
It is. This system ensures the audience processes the information in the intended structured sequence, and the visual differences between levels have to be stark enough to be instantly recognizable.
But hierarchy isn't just about type size. We can also use color and scale to structure the message dramatically.
Color is incredibly organizational. You can use large blocks of color behind certain sections for immediate separation. You can use repetition of a single accent color, say a vibrant red to link all calls to action across a multi-page document.
For cohesion.
Right. And most powerfully, you use color coding, assigning a specific, consistent meaning to a color, such as using blue for finance data and green for environmental data across an infographic.
And regarding scale, we need to clarify the difference between size and scale, because they are often confused.
They are. Size is a fixed, measurable value, like a font size of 12-bit. Scale is the relative relationship of that element to its surroundings.
Whoa.
You create hierarchy by changing the scale of elements relative to each other, making something look small or large on the page. Using a monumental drop cap, for instance, or scaling a letter to break up a block of text visually makes that letter appear huge relative to the body text, immediately drawing the audience's eye to the start of the section.
Now we address the invisible structures that underpin a successful layout. If hierarchy is about importance, composition is about structural harmony, starting with the use of grids and alignment.
Grids are the essential invisible architecture. They help organize elements in an ordered, predictable way, making the design process faster and the final product cleaner.
And there are different types.
You have simple grids like the single column grid, which is great for continuous text, and the ubiquitous 2, 3, or 4 column grids, which help structure text and images into digestible modules. For complex systems, we often use the modular grid, which divides the page into blocks of the same size, ideal for highly structured web design.
And grids lead directly into alignment, how text and elements line up relative to each other and the grid.
Left-aligned text is the most common in Western languages because it maintains a ragged right edge, which helps the eye track back to the next line. Centered text should be used sparingly.
Why that?
It works best for short headings or captions, but it quickly becomes tiresome to read in long blocks because your eye has to find a new starting point for every single line.
And what about justified alignment, where both the left and right edges are clean vertical lines?
Justified alignment looks formal and clean, but it presents a huge problem. To maintain those clean vertical edges, the design software often has to create awkward, varying spaces between words, sometimes resulting in distracting vertical rivers of white space running through the paragraph.
Which kills readability.
It seriously compromises readability, so it must be used with extreme caution and manual adjustment.
Beyond structure, composition needs to feel aesthetically pleasing. How do we achieve that essential harmony and balance?
That requires understanding visual weight, which describes how much an element attracts the viewer, influenced by its size, its dark tone, its high saturation, or its texture.
And we're aiming for balance.
We strive for either symmetrical or asymmetrical balance. Symmetrical balance means equal visual weight on both sides of a central line. It feels stable, controlled, and formal. Think classic architecture.
But if you want energy and movement, you aim for asymmetrical balance.
Right. Asymmetrical balance uses an unequal distribution of size or weight that is still visually balanced overall. This is more dynamic and interesting. And remember the factors that add visual weight. Darker colors carry more weight than lighter ones, and saturated colors carry more weight than muted ones.
The example of balancing a large light green apple with a small, darker red pear.
It illustrates it perfectly. The small dark object can counteract the large light object.
Finally, we have to look at composition tailored for the modern context, digital media.
Designing for digital media requires content that is responsive, dynamic, and searchable. You're designing for handheld screens and short attention spans, so the priority is quick access and simple structure.
Right.
Websites range from simple single-page sites to complex e-commerce platforms, but they all share one demand: a responsive layout.
Meaning the layout has to adjust automatically across desktop, tablet, and phone screens.
Exactly. Content might stack vertically on a phone that was horizontal on a desktop. Because flow and functionality are paramount, designers use wireframes very early in the planning process.
A blueprint, a structural blueprint, a kind of schematic that maps the flow and function of the site. It shows what navigation, content blocks, and links will be placed before any design elements like color or fonts are added. This ensures the structure works before you commit to the expensive aesthetics. We've covered the entire journey, from abstract strategy to detailed composition. The final stage is execution, turning the files into physical products or digital launches. Sometimes this involves acknowledging when outside help is necessary, the importance of working with professionals.
A great designer knows their limitations. You might need a specialist copywriter for succinct, legally vetted text, or a photographer for bespoke, high-quality images that match your brand tone.
Or an illustrator.
Or an illustrator if you require custom artwork. These specialists guarantee a level of quality beyond what most people can achieve alone.
The key to engaging these specialists successfully is the briefing.
A poor brief results in expensive, unusable work. The professional needs a clear brief detailing the what, why, and when of the project, but you must also cover technical and legal details up front.
Like?
This includes clarifying the required resolution and image style for a photographer, and confirming rights to use imagery and fonts, that's licensing, as well as ensuring clear copyright agreements are in place regarding ownership of the final assets.
For those projects destined for a physical product, the preparation process for printing is notoriously strict. We need a detailed checklist for preparing designs for print.
This is where meticulousness saves you from very costly errors. First, always ask the printer for their exact specifications, paper type, color profiles, and preferred file formats. Then do your graphic checks. Ensure layout, borders, and alignments are correct.
And the magic number for image resolution?
For print quality, it demands a minimum image resolution of 300 dpi, dots per inch. This is absolutely non-negotiable for sharp images. 72 dpi, which is fine for the screen, will look blurry and pixelated when printed.
You have to do your color checks.
Rigorously. All images must be converted to CMYK mode for printing, not RGB.
And finally, the essential printing term, bleed.
Bleed is vital. It's the extra area of the image that extends past the trim line, typically 3 millimeters. It is necessary so that when the large printing sheet is cut down to size, slight variations in the trimming process don't leave unwanted thin white edges around your design.
If you don't include bleed, your final product will look unprofessional.
Instantly.
Switching gears, let's look at the final checks for going live with a digital project, like a website.
The website launch checklist focuses heavily on user experience and technical function. You need content checks, the absolute latest versions of text and images, and another round of proofreading.
It's amazing how typos survive until the last moment.
They always do. For image checks here, the resolution is generally 72 dpi for the screen, but optimization is key.
Why is optimization so important for digital images?
File size is paramount. Images have to be compressed and optimized, generally aiming for under 1 megabyte, or even far less, per image. Because every millisecond delay in load time causes audience attrition. People just abandon slow loading sites.
And you have to do link testing.
Rigorous link testing to ensure every internal and external link works correctly, especially on dynamic sites.
And finally, browser and device checks.
Yes, critical. You must test for consistency and legibility across multiple browsers, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, and crucially, across different devices, desktop, tablet, phone. Ensure fonts and sizes are readable, and that the responsive layout hasn't created any broken formatting or awkward stacking on a vertical mobile screen.
For those starting out or looking for options on a budget, the sources point toward numerous free design resources available today.
Open source material is a massive advantage for beginners. For fonts, resources like Google Fonts and Font Squirrel offer thousands of free, high-quality fonts that often include full typeface families.
And for images,
For images, royalty-free stock photography sites like Unsplash and Pexels provide high-resolution images for free use, often without credit required.
what about free software, replacing high-cost subscription tools?
There are excellent open-source alternatives. GIMP for image editing, Inkscape for vector editing like creating logos, and Scribus for professional-level desktop publishing layout. However, the sources wisely warn about potential pitfalls.
Break.
Limited support and the increased risk of malware from untrustworthy downloads. You should always use official, vetted sources.
Finally, we must touch on the legal landscape surrounding design assets. We can't just take things we find online.
Legalities are non-negotiable. Designers must understand copyright, who owns the creative work, which is usually the creator, and licensing, which is the explicit permission you have to use a specific font or image. An essential resource here is Creative Commons licenses.
What exactly does a Creative Commons license tell me?
It's a spectrum of permission. A Creative Commons license permits the free use of images and fonts under specific, easy-to-understand conditions. The most common condition is attribution, CC BY, meaning you must credit the creator. Others might restrict commercial use, NC. These licenses are essential for designers operating on a budget, ensuring you stay legal while utilizing free, high-quality resources.
We have journeyed from the strategic realm of market mapping through the molecular personality of typefaces, the emotional impact of color, the structure of grids and hierarchy, all the way down to the technical necessity of checking bleed and ensuring CMYK conversions.
The central identity of this source material is clear. Design is not some mystical process reserved for the naturally talented. It is thoughtful, structured, and rules-based decision-making.
Right.
The real shortcut in graphic design isn't talent. It's meticulous planning and understanding the rules of structure and hierarchy before you even start clicking buttons. Structure is the foundation of powerful communication.
The tools for design are now abundant and often free. If we accept that every single choice we make, from the typeface on an internal email announcement to the color palette of a high-stakes presentation slide, sends an emotional, structural message, we have to become more critically self-aware of our visual choices.
Especially where they might be conflicting with our core message.
Exactly.
And that leads to our final provocative thought for you to consider. Now that you understand the building blocks and the necessity of strategic consistency, what hidden bias or conflicting intention are you unknowingly communicating to your audience through your current designs? And what single design element, whether it's simplifying your brand emotion, adjusting your kerning on your logo, or implementing the rule of thirds on your next slide, will you change first to take conscious control of that visual message?